I'm here with the Association of African Universities Television, AUTV. I just want to say that without the media, you won't know what's going on in the world. Even with the media, you sometimes don't know what's going on in the world. So you need to tune in to the reliable sources who are really on the front lines, who can give you the information you need and give you facts, not conjecture, give you real news, not fake news. And this is the place to find it, AUTV.
The voice of higher education in Africa.
Hello and welcome to the Hello Africa Morning Show, coming to you live from the headquarters of the Association of African Universities here in Accra, Ghana. We begin with the top African news. My name is Philemon Edwards. One of Ghana's leading industrialists has delivered a powerful call to action at the 10th Ghana CEO Summit, urging the country to stop exporting raw materials and start exporting finished products and skilled jobs. Mukesh Takwani, President and CEO of B5 Plus Limited, told a packed audience that included President John Mahama, ministers, diplomats, and investors that Ghana must now embrace what he called an industrial decade, transforming its natural and human resources into globally competitive industries. He outlined 5 strategic shifts he believes are essential to making that vision a reality.
Takwani argued that for too long, Africa has exported opportunity and imported value, and that Ghana must now decisively reverse that trend. Those 5 sheets cover production-led growth, practical local content frameworks, a genuine 24-hour economy, complete agricultural value chain, and circular economy principles that turn waste into productive resources. On agriculture, Takwani was direct. He argued that where Ghana grows, it must process, where it processes, it must package, and where it packages, it must export. He also announced upon completion of its Phase 2 expansion, B5 Plus will operate a 20 megawatt rooftop solar installation, one of the largest private sector industrial solar projects on the African continent. On policy, he called for tax exemptions on productive machinery, stronger local content enforcement, and performance-based incentives for companies that create jobs and invest in skills. He also flagged congestion along the Tema Motorway as a significant drag on industrial productivity. Closing his address, Takwani challenged every CEO in the room to develop a 24-hour readiness plan and call for a Ghana where every raw material moves up the chain, every factory creates dignity, and every business leader become a builder of national transformation.
Of real estate brokers says Ghana's housing problem is not a shortage of house, but a shortage of affordable ones. Jacob Adolfo Anson told the Bank of Ghana sensitization workshop in Accra that while the country's housing deficit is estimated at up to 2 million units, approximately 1.5 million housing units are currently sitting vacant across the country. He argued that most available properties were developed with investors and foreign buyers in mind, putting them well beyond the reach of the average Ghanaian, and called on policymakers to shift focus toward affordable housing systems rather than simply increasing housing stock.
Anson was empathetic that the country does not have a housing deficit in the traditional sense. He stressed that it is the system that needs to be fixed, pointing to a clear mismatch between available housing stock and the purchasing power of ordinary Ghanaians. He urged stakeholders in the real estate sector to work together to address pricing challenges and improve access to financing for local buyers. The workshop was organized by the Collateral Registry of the Bank of Ghana in collaboration with GAREP, bringing together real estate brokers to deepen their understanding of the Borrowers and Lenders Act of 2022. The deputy head of the Collateral Registry, Rosemary Akabutu, told participants that transparency and due diligence remain critical to building confidence in both the real estate and credit markets. She noted that the Act had introduced reforms to reduce lending risks and improve access to credit, and that conducting property searches before transactions was essential to minimize fraud, prevent disputes, and protect investment. She stressed that transparency is critical not only in financial transactions, but in fostering trust and upholding the confidence of every stakeholder in the system. Despite the reforms having been in place for several years, Akabutu acknowledged that public awareness of the Collateral Registry remains low, prompting the intensified stakeholder engagement and financial literacy programs underway.
South African opposition leader Julius Malema has criticized Ghana's decision to evacuate its citizens from South Africa amid rising fears of xenophobic violence. The Economic Freedom Fighters leader argued that Ghana's response was premature and risks escalating tensions, saying that South African authorities should have been given more time to handle the situation through dialogue and law enforcement. His comments come as hundreds of Ghanaians have begun leaving South Africa, with about 300 nationals boarding a repatriation flight from OR Tambo International Airport in Johannesburg on May 27th, including women and children.
Malema contended that Ghana's evacuation was not necessary at that moment, and that it created a perception that all South Africans share the views of those behind the violence. He further argued that Ghana's response did not reinforce dialogue or diplomatic engagement, but instead created what he described as a very bad and extreme situation. He did, however, acknowledge that legally documented Ghanaian migrants who feel unsafe have every right to seek protection from police and other security agencies. Ghana's High Commissioner to South Africa, Benjamin Kwashi, says 826 Ghanaians have registered to return home. Foreign Affairs Minister Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa has confirmed that additional evacuation flights are expected next week. The departures follows protests by the group March and March across parts of Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal and Eastern Cape, which has called for undocumented foreign nationals to leave South Africa by the end of June. Some Ghanaian nationals have reported violent attacks and intimidation during those protests. South Africa has experienced repeated outbreaks of xenophobic violence over the years, frequently targeting migrants from other African countries.
Universities in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo are struggling to survive a double crisis, an Ebola outbreak and an intensifying armed conflict. Despite over 220 suspected deaths and 1,000 infections recorded, health authorities have kept educational institutions open, preferring a risk mapping approach over a lockdown. But for students already navigating gunfire, displacement, and overcrowded classrooms, the outbreak has added yet another layer of danger to daily academic life. More than 130 universities across Eastern Congo are now directly or indirectly affected by the violence, with thousands of students watching semesters shrink and graduation prospects fade. At the University of Goma, the reality is stark. Students arrive each morning to queue at chlorinated water stations for mandatory hand washing, only to spend hours packed shoulder to shoulder in crowded lecture halls. One third-year student captured the contradiction plainly, questioning the value of hand washing when students spend 4 hours sitting pressed tightly against one another. The conflict between M23 militia and the Congolese armed forces has effectively severed a critical academic lifeline. For years, experienced lecturers from institutions such as the University of Kinshasa traveled east to teach specialized courses, supervise postgraduate research, and validate master's and doctoral programs. That system has now nearly collapsed. Professor Alphonse Wawa, a senior lecturer who taught across both Kinshasa and Eastern DRC, says traveling to the east now feels like walking into a war zone, with airports tense, roads blocked, and transport costs having skyrocketed. He says it is heartbreaking because students are paying the price. In their absence, junior lecturers and assistants have been pushed into the roles far beyond their qualifications.
At the University for Peace, assistant lecturer Jean-Claude Nondo says he was hired to assist in sociology courses but now teaches advanced research methodology classes that normally require senior academic qualifications. He acknowledges plainly that what is happening is emergency teaching, not quality higher education, with laboratories closed, dissertation supervision stalled, and students at risk of graduating with incomplete academic preparation. For students, the stakes could not be higher. Final year engineering student Justin Mwenze says a semester that should last 6 months is now compressed into 3 chaotic months of rushed lectures with cancelled practical sessions and missing professors. He says his generation fears graduating without the skills needed to compete anywhere else in the country. Attempts to shift learning online have largely failed. Reliable electricity and affordable internet remain out of reach for most families in eastern Congo. Law student Sarah Wetemwami says that while authorities speak of digital modernization, her internet connection disappears every few minutes, and many students cannot afford enough data to follow a single lecture. For many educators, the fear is no longer simply about interrupted semesters. It is about losing an entire generation of doctors, engineers, lawyers, and researchers before they ever have the chance to emerge.
And in our final story, the Democratic Republic of Congo's health and communication ministers have traveled to Bunia, the epicenter of the country's latest Ebola outbreak, to oversee the response on the ground. Health Minister Samuel Roger Kamba said he made the trip primarily to support healthcare workers bearing the brunt of the crisis following the loss of doctors and qualified medical staff. With suspected cases nearing 1,000 and at least 220 deaths recorded, the World Health Organization's Director General, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, is also expected in Ituri province after arriving in Kinshasa on Thursday.
Minister Kamba was clear about the purpose of his visit, saying his presence was first and foremost to show sympathy and solidarity with frontline healthcare workers who have lost colleagues to the outbreak. Congo's health ministry has confirmed 101 cases so far and is currently tracking more than 3,000 possible contacts. Speaking after his arrival in Kinshasa, WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said he was committed to doing everything in his power to help, expressing confidence that the outbreak can be stopped and that together, the international community can overcome it. He also issued an urgent appeal to warring parties in eastern DRC to declare a ceasefire, warning that conflict and displacement make every aspect of the response harder, and that no cause or grievance is worth condemning innocent people to death from a preventable disease. The outbreak is spreading rapidly, prompting neighboring countries to act. Uganda ordered the closure of its border with Congo on Wednesday, after suspected cases of a rare strain of Ebola surged across the border and confirmed cases were recorded among Ugandan nationals.
And that's how we end the Top African News. Stay tuned for the news discussion.
Ever wondered what drives ordinary people to do extraordinary things? Every week, a new story unfolds. But these aren't just stories. They are the journeys of courage, resilience, and vision. On Impact Stories, we open the door to remarkable personalities and everyday heroes. Experience the passion behind their purpose. Witness the setbacks, the breakthroughs, and the moment that defines a legacy. Journey with us on AAU TV every Saturday at 4 p.m. as we celebrate those who are making an impact. Tune in to Impact Stories, where real people share real journeys and real impact, each one leaving behind a legacy written in gold. Only on AAU TV.
Hello, Africa. Keep watching AAU TV, the voice of higher education in Africa.
This program is proudly sponsored by Venom Mineral Water, Share the Love, and Bigo Drinks. This program is proudly sponsored by Venom Mineral Water, Share the Love, and Bigo Drinks.
Welcome back from that break, and if you're joining us, this is the Hello Africa morning show coming to you live from the headquarters of the Association of African Universities here in Accra, Ghana. My name is Philemon Edwards, and then I'll be doing the show on a solo run today. So join me as we do the discussions. And it's the 1st of June, 2026 anyway. I'm not sure what you're thinking, but let me tell you what I'm thinking. That means that we are almost halfway through the year. At the beginning of every year, what most of us do is to write resolutions, make plans, all of these things. Almost halfway through the year, here's the question. How far have you gone? Especially those of you who had aspiration for gym, whatever, wanting to kill the belly fat, wanting to watch your weight, wanting to kill the drinking of the beer and whatever. I don't know how it's working, but your guess is as good as mine. It's the 1st of June. So if you haven't achieved anything yet, it's a good time to use the next 30 days to analyze things and then think about what you're going to do for the next 6 months of the year in 2026. This is free advice, no consultation fee. Yeah? Anyway, so this is the Hello Africa Morning Show, and then we'll begin the news review and discussion right away. And in our first story, Africa is staring down a water and sanitation emergency, according to a 2025 Joint Monitoring Program report by the WMO and UNICEF. More than 400 million people across the continent still lack access to safely managed drinking water, and progress is dangerously slow. The alarm was raised at the African Academic Heritage Fair 2026, held in Accra and convened by the Association of African Universities. The event, held under the theme Sustainable Water Availability and Safe Sanitation, the Role of Higher Education in Achieving Agenda 2063, brought together university leaders, policymakers, researchers, students, and development partners to confront one of Africa's most urgent development challenges. But beyond the speeches, 6 student and researcher-led projects stepped forward with homegrown answers, pitching innovative water and sanitation solutions before a panel of expert judges from across the continent. So this program, the AAHF Fair, happened last Monday, that's the 25th of May, at the Association of African Universities Secretariat, and then we talked a lot about water on that very day. So to get into the discussion, the country representative for Ghana at the International Water Management Institute, Professor Kehinde Ogunjobi, cited a 2025 WMO and UNICEF Joint Monitoring Program report, which showed that over 400 million Africans still lack access to safely managed drinking water. That's crazy. 400 million Africans in 2026 still lack access to safely managed drinking water. So the question I want to be asking you right now is, are you part of the 400 million Africans? Probably you live in Accra. Probably you live in some other capital country in any part of Africa. So you probably have access to potable drinking water. But what about those who live on the outskirts of the capital towns in the various African countries? To take Ghana, for example, Ghana is plagued by illegal mining, which we call galamsey, which is affecting our water bodies. And so it's costing the Ghana Water Company to treat water at a more expensive rate, which means we are going to be paying higher tariffs. Taking this example into consideration, do you think you have access to proper drinking water? In fact, when was the last time you had good water flowing through your taps? That's a very big question. Anyway, so Professor Kehinde made this submission, which says over 400 million Africans have this problem still in the year 2026, which is very, very alarming. And also in the report, he noted that sub-Saharan Africa improved access from only 27% in 2015 to about 33% in 2024. This signifies that our progress when it comes to tackling this water problem is really, really slow. Yes, we know there's a problem. We know it is being handled, but what is the rate of progress? When we talk about Agenda 2063, it looks like 2063 is far away, but this is 2026. We are not too far away from that. How well are we tackling this problem? How well are we doing at the pace at which we are running? Are we expected to increase pace? If we are going to increase pace in tackling a problem of this magnitude, how speedily are we ready to work? What are the resources we are engaging in? How much money are we willing to commit to these kinds of projects to be able to get Africa to be in the place that we are wanting it to be at? Okay, so that's a very good place to start from. Again, Professor Kehinde warned that West and Central Africa is the only sub-regions where open defecation is still increasing, with sanitation access lagging drinking water access by about 9% points. And this is crazy. That's another thing when you talk about sanitation, which is a major problem. Open defecation. It's very disheartening, and also I don't have the words to qualify them. To know that in 2026 there are many homes and places of business that do not have a proper toilet for people to use when they need to use it, and so people will have to engage in open defecation, which increases several other risks to the lives that live around these areas. How are we doing this to ourselves in 2026? How are we doing this to ourselves in Africa specifically? Anyway, that's for you to think about and to answer. So the major question I want to be asking here is, are African governments treating the water and sanitation crisis with the urgency it deserves, or is the continent sleepwalking into a deeper public health emergency? Again, taking the case of Accra, Ghana, it's interesting to note that we claim to be working around sanitation. We see the work ongoing, but in my opinion, it's not the best. For example, where I live in Accra is a place called Oyarifa. Driving all the way to work towards East Legon, sometimes in between the islands of the road against oncoming traffic, you see rubbish deposited on the islands. And the purpose of this is that the trucks that carry the garbage are expected to come carry this rubbish from the islands. And that's a pretty crazy eyesore on your way to work, for example, on a Monday morning. How is this supposed to even give you morale for you to begin your week and have a productive week ahead, when you're driving to work and then you're supposed to be focusing and you turn to the right or to the left and all you're seeing is rubbish? Like, when I say rubbish, I mean proper rubbish, to the extent that sadly, if you don't have your AC on and your windows are down, you are smelling garbage or rubbish all your way through till you are away from this thing. And it's not in one single place. It's in several different spots on your way when you're driving. I don't know how the other parts of Accra look like, but at least where I live and I travel that journey to work weekly, it's an eyesore that I see every week. How well are we managing this? Who is not doing their job? This is crazy. And when we talk about open defecation, most of us will experience this in the hinterlands and then in areas that are probably out of Accra. But even in Accra, it will be surprising for you to know that you go to some areas towards the coast, and then there's the case of open defecation. And so when there's the outbreak of things like cholera, how are we expected to survive this as a country? Your guess is as good as mine. And this is not an interesting topic to discuss on a Monday morning. It's the 1st of June. I should be discussing something exciting about Africa. But here's me talking about the woes of Africa at this point, and it is crazy. Anyway, now let's look at the role of higher education in terms of what we can do with regards to water and then sanitation. So at the AAHF 2026 program, the Secretary General of the Association of African Universities, represented by Dr. Sylvia Mkandawire, opened the fair by stressing that Africa's universities are no longer peripheral observers of development. They are active laboratories for transformation. And that's a very important point. And I would want to urge on this note that all African universities, regardless of your capacity, put in some work, put in some energy, and give this part of our economy some attention, where we can be dealing with water situation and then sanitation problems, because these things are very, very important when we want to talk about the development of the human resources that we are trying to grow across the continent. So Dr. Sylvia also noted that what has often been missing is a strong bridge between knowledge and implementation, between research and policy, and between African solutions and the systems needed to scale them down. She challenged students and researchers to move beyond conversation toward actionable commitments. Again, this is just what we're just talking about, and this is what I've been ranting about in the last few minutes. Look, when it comes to research, when it comes to doing experiments in the laboratories and all of these things, we seem to have knowledge about all of these things. Somehow, some way, we are able to engage researchers, even sometimes do the research funded, and then at the end of the day, we package the research and then we shelf it. What happens to the implementation of this research that has been done? And one of the things that excited me about this fair is that we had homegrown solutions for the continent. And it's a great thing, because I've always said on this show that the problems of Africans must be managed by Africans and not by Europeans or Americans or any other person from any part of any other continent in any part of the world. So to have homegrown solutions from homegrown people is one of the best things that we can do for ourselves. I can only hope and pray that all of the solutions that we discussed, including some 6 pictures that we had a look at later on the show, will be able to see the light of day and will not only remain experiments and whatever they are, and then we'll shelve these researchers. I hope and pray that something good will come out of this. So one of the pictures that we saw came from Dr. Victor Yasi from Nigeria, who presented Aqualink, a community-driven solar-powered water purification system designed for rural communities in Anambra State, where cholera and typhoid remain prevalent. So the system uses UV sterilization to purify water and is designed to run 24 hours a day without relying on the national grid, which is a good thing because Nigeria has major power problems. Now, a key feature is community ownership, where locals are trained to manage and maintain the system to ensure long-term sustainability. Judges praised the community engagement model, but also raised questions about the long-term sustainability of the filtration system supply chain and the solar panel maintenance costs. So the question here is, can community-owned water infrastructures outlast donor funding, and what does it take to make it work? So this is more of a research question. I know it might be a bit technical for you if you're listening, but I believe that your sharp minds will be able to think along with me on this one. Down the second page, we had Linda Manzi, and this is smart leak detection for urban water systems. Now, a team from the National University of Science and Technology in Zimbabwe presented Linda Manzi, meaning Water Guardian, in Ndebele, in a solar-powered smart monitoring platform designed to reduce non-revenue water loss in urban distribution systems. So in some African cities, between 45 and 65% of treated water is lost before it reaches consumers due to leaks, pipe bursts, and aging infrastructure. Wow. interesting, between 45 and 65%. So maybe those of you in Ghana, the question I asked during the beginning of the show, when was the last time you saw water flow through your taps at the Ghana, from the Ghana Water Company? Maybe this could be one of the problems. Anyway, so Linda Manzi uses IoT sensors, hydraulic modeling, and automated anomaly detection to shift water utilities from reactive to proactive maintenance. Now, the team confirmed they own the software built on an open source hydraulic modeling platform and a 10-node pilot in Bulawayo, which is estimated to cost approximately $8,650 US dollars. Now, again, with billions of liters of water treated and then it's lost daily across several African cities or countries, how urgently do urban water utilities need to invest in smart monitoring technology? This is a good question because water, we know, is life. We know that the sources of water are limited in many parts of the continent. And in the case of Ghana, we have Galamsey affecting us, and almost all our natural water bodies have been affected at the moment. So if we have the little water that is running through the Ghana Water Company's pipelines, the question is, how much leakage do we have? How much of this water is not reaching the consumer? From this research, about 45 to 65% of it is going away. This research is not based on Ghana. So the question is, if it is supposed to be the same in Ghana, because we have seen cases where, for example, in my neighborhood, I've seen pipelines broken, and then it takes several hours before they get fixed. Sometimes more than 24 hours before they get fixed. So all of this water that is not reaching homes, how are we dealing with these things? And this is one of the pictures that we saw during the fair. One of the third ones, or another one we saw, a third one was an integrated water and environmental protection model, which was from Zimbabwe. So Kanyos Impala from Lupane State University in Zimbabwe presented a completed community water project in Binga district, one of Zimbabwe's poorest, serving 270 households and a primary school. So the project installed infiltration galleries using natural sand filtration, solar-powered pumps, and consolidated gardens for elderly women and widows. By 2024, even during a severe dry spell, a 20-liter bucket took just 2 minutes to fill. Wow. 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 Compared to hours of working before the intervention, the wetland, previously drying due to animal trampling and overuse, has regenerated after being fenced off, with indigenous trees like Jatropha being explored as sustainable live fence. So because of time, I'll just run through the rest of the pictures that we received. So the fourth one was a Solar Aqua enterprise. Now this is a mobile water purification for northern Ghana. So Ruth Fortaglan Pagil, a final year biochemistry student at the University of Development Studies in Tamale, Ghana, presented Solar Aqua Enterprise, a solar-powered mobile multi-stage water purification system targeting rural communities in northern Ghana. Inspired by witnessing a child drink water shared with cattle, Ruth decided a locally built unit capable of serving 300 to 500 people daily, producing 400 to 700 liters of clean water per cycle. Now, the system uses a coin activation model where users pay a small fee per container to generate revenue for deploying additional units. Judges raised questions about the timeline for scaling from one unit to the next using only coin revenue, and encourage earlier engagement with governments and NGO partnerships. So the question here can be that, or is that, can state-led innovations like Solar Aqua Enterprise bridge the gap between grassroots ingenuity and the investments needed to reach communities at scale? So these were some of the pictures we saw during the AAHF 2026, which was held last Monday on the 25th of May at the Secretariat of the Association of African Universities. So we can just all agree together that the water problem and sanitation is still not fully dealt with, and we must all come together to do our very best and see what we can do regarding this across the various countries on the continent. In our next story, which has been trending for the past 2 weeks or 3 weeks, is that 300 Ghanaians have landed safely in Ghana or in Accra after being evacuated from South Africa amid a wave of xenophobic attacks targeting foreign nationals. Now, the returnees have touched down at the Accra International Airport, or they touched down at the airport on May 27th aboard a chartered Ethiopian Airlines flight received by senior government officials, including the Chief of Staff Julius Deborah and Foreign Affairs Minister Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa. The government has promised a comprehensive reintegration package covering transportation allowances, psychosocial support, and access to job opportunities. But with over 600 additional Ghanaians now registered for evacuation, the exercise is expanding well beyond its original scope. The evacuation has sparked a diplomatic role with South African opposition figures, including EFF leader Julius Malema and March Movement leader Jacinta Zuma, pushing back strongly against Ghana's response, calling it an overreaction that misrepresented the situation on the ground. Now, what I would want to find out from you watching right now is this: Are you on the side of Malema or on the side of Ghana? Do you really think that Ghana overreacted by starting an evacuation flight for its nationals that are based in South Africa at the moment? And as of this morning, the number of people who are supposed to be evacuated have come to over 800, and already we have received about 300 in the country already. So tell me, is this an overreaction? When we have seen over the past few weeks the number of attacks that have happened, and we have seen evidences in videos, in photos, seeing other nationals who reside in South Africa being beaten, bullied, chased, mistreated, basically. Their human rights practically being trampled upon, just like that. Is this an overreaction when a government that cares for its people decides to evacuate its nationals who are living in South Africa? I don't think it's an overreaction, if you ask me, in my opinion. So the evacuation has divided opinions both at home and then abroad. And Ghana's government says that it's acted swiftly to protect the dignity of its citizens. Critics in South Africa said the response was premature and diplomatically damaging. Key questions here are these. Okay, did Ghana exhaust our diplomatic channels before ordering evacuation? This is a major question. But if you ask me again, my rhetorical question here will be, at what point were we supposed to wait to see things go wrong before we came in as a country or as a government to order an evacuation of our nationals that were staying in South Africa? I think, if you ask me, that we have rather saved the diplomatic relations, because if things have gone south and more Ghanaians and other African nationals living in South Africa had gone through further attacks, I think diplomatic relations could have been worse. I discussed this with a friend, and we're talking about how much we know the South African government was trying to do something, but in my opinion, that action was, was too slow, if you ask me, because every day there were reports. We saw videos, we saw pictures. So how can this be an overreaction when a government that cares for its people orders an evacuation for its nationals? Again, was the speed of the response a sign of strong governance in terms of politics for our country? Because many have applauded in the country here that the government has done well to repatriate all of our brothers and sisters that live in South Africa. Of course, there are still some of them there, and I've heard the foreign minister say that in this week and the next week, there's still more people to be evacuated from South Africa and be brought back home. So does this show a strong governance or a political posture for our government? I mean, that question is for you to answer. And what precedent does this set for Ghana to handle future crises? That's very key. So many of us, Ghanaian nationals and other African nationals who are willing to travel outside our countries to seek greener pastures, to go to school, to relocate for whatever reasons we think, we want to do these things? What are the future crises that we are anticipating may happen? And mind you, these are problems that just arise as a result of sometimes no fault of ours, or for whatever reason there might be or there might not be. It just happens because we live in a world full of human beings. It's a human institution, and as long as there are human beings anywhere, human problems will continue to arise, politically, socially, or whatever ways that we can align these problems to. They will just arise. So the question is, what future crisis can arise, and how are we willing to handle these things? I think we can learn from these things and then make a move on from there. Now, so what has begun with 300 evacuees. Now we are looking at 826 Ghanaians who have registered at the High Commission in Pretoria. And so it means that an additional 600 people have registered since the first batch came home, and pushing the numbers beyond what was actually expected in the beginning. And so it means that we are expecting more flights to be coming into the country from South Africa with our brothers and sisters who went to South Africa for whatever reason. So let's look at a little bit of let's dig into the lives of them, who the evacuees are, and then what they do, because all of these people have a human story behind whatever the situation is. So among the returnees are women, their children, and 26 individuals detained for visa violations. That's what we understand. And then one returnee described experience in quotes, hell in a cell. And I'm sure you know what that means. Now, the government has promised transportation allowances and some sort of a stipend to help our brothers and sisters reintegrate into the system properly. But is this supposed to be a one-time package? That's one of the questions a lot of people are asking. And also, if it is not a one-time package, how long are we looking to be able to support our brothers and sisters from South Africa, and how sustainable is this? Because remember, many of these things are going to be coming from the coffers of the government. Was there a budget for it? Probably no, because we did not anticipate this was going to happen. So what is the sustainability plan for this if it is not going to be a one-time payment and it has to continue over time? And how much are we talking about anyway regarding over 800 evacuees coming into the country? All right, so these are some of the questions that we are thinking about and around. So the evacuation has triggered a sharp exchange between Accra and Johannesburg. And Jacinta Zuma has accused Ghana of launching a PR exercise that unfairly painted South Africa as xenophobic. And these are some of the challenges that I have, because we have seen these things not only on social media, because sometimes people want to make a case that social media doesn't represent the true information that circulates. But we have seen this on the news, not only locally, but also on international platforms like CNN, on BBC, on Al Jazeera, and Fox, and other platforms. You can keep making that list. So on what platform are we trying to say to ourselves that this is a PR stunt or an exercise which has unfairly painted South Africa as xenophobic? Because this is not the first time we have heard of anything of this sort coming from South Africa. I mean, if you ask me, in my opinion, we'll do ourselves a lot of good if we go back to the drawing board or sit down and talk about these things truthfully and think about what the situation proper is and what triggered all of these things. I do understand faintly from what I hear that the people of South Africa want the attention of their government. But is this the way to go? Are other nationals supposed to be bearing the brunt for asking for attention from your government? I mean, if I am wrong, somebody educate me on this. Now, Julius Malema has also argued that the evacuation created a bad and extreme situation that undermined dialogue. And this is where I ask that question again. We have seen videos and we have seen pictures of people brutalized and beaten and whatever, mistreated unfairly. How much longer were we supposed to wait to make this evacuation exercise happen or bring our people home from South Africa? This is crazy, if you ask me. So I didn't see why all of this is painted in black and white, but we are choosing to call it other colors for whatever reason. and it's a big, big, big problem. So this is not the first time South Africa has seen violence against foreign nationals. Now, the deeper issues driving these outbreaks, number one, here are some of the reasons, okay? They include high unemployment and competition for jobs and public services. So many people think that the foreign nationals have come to take the jobs of the locals in South Africa, okay? They also think that political groups are exploiting anti-immigrant sentiments for mobilization, okay? And this is quite politically motivated. Now, an ultimatum from the March group demanding that undocumented foreigners leave by June 30th. That's another major thing which is going on at the moment. I do understand when it comes to undocumented immigrants, and that's a problem that is being fought all over the world in many countries, especially in Europe and America. So is this a crisis that diplomacy alone can solve? That's a big question. Or does South Africa need deeper structural and policy reforms to address the root causes? I think this is where the major question is for me, and I think that there's supposed to be a proper policy reform to address the root causes of what is xenophobic attacks are all about. Okay, so at the heart of this is a story about Africans attacking Africans. That's the biggest issue in this matter. Africans attacking Africans. We have talked about Africans coming together, uniting to build a stronger front, to build the continent. So if Africans are attacking Africans, where are we going? Let's take a look at this video and we'll get back to the story quickly.
The Ghana response was not necessary because it now creates an impression that we are all like that, when it is a certain section of our society that needs to be contained by law enforcement. And one Ghanaian lady was saying, you see, the problem is, and I wouldn't have taken this option. The problem is we're being beaten in front of the police and the police are not doing anything. That's the problem. And when this opportunity came for me to leave, I left, because if the police can't defend me, it means the state is in agreement with the people who are beating me. So we think it was too quick. We'll still resolve this, and President of Ghana should have given us, some time to really deal with this matter, and we'll get to the bottom of it. We hope they will come back to their senses. We don't have to respond the same way they did. We need to pursue the diplomatic engagements with Ghana until we find one another. We don't think Ghana responded in a manner that really reinforces dialogue and diplomatic engagements. It actually creates a very bad, extreme situation, which is not. It's a selected few, and we are pursuing and persuading government to still act on those few. And we're saying to them, they must give us some time, they must be patient, and those who don't feel safe, especially the legally documented Ghanaians, should be able to run to police stations for safety, and then they will be directed to rightful places where they will be secured. But, it's an emotional issue for many of them, understandably so, but the reaction of government should have been, postponed a bit to give us an opportunity to deal with what is happening here in South Africa.
So that was Julius Malema speaking over there. And if I heard him well or correctly, here's a Ghanaian woman who says she would choose to come back to Ghana because she saw and she witnessed, and she was actually part of people beaten in front of South African police, and the police did nothing. So she thinks that the police or the government are in support of what the citizens are doing to the foreign nationals. Tell me how to make this issue sensible to any Ghanaian. That foreign nationals are beaten in front of South African police and the police are doing nothing about it. It is true there might be documented Ghanaians. Again, there might be undocumented Ghanaians living in South Africa. All things being equal, let's just assume that all of these, or at least more than half of these people who are being mistreated, are legally documented in South Africa. These people, like Malema said, should be able to go to the police station for protection because they live legally in the country and they have done nothing wrong. If for anything, they are contributing to the economy of South Africa, making legal living and not hurting anybody. So tell me how South African police cannot act in defense of any human being, regardless of color or skin or whatever the reasons might be. Just explain to me how this should make sense. So this is where I disagree with Julius Malema that the Ghana government should have given them a bit of time to handle the situation. How much more time when we have seen deaths already? We have seen people beaten. We've seen blood. The evidences are clear. And the police are not protecting these people, okay, whether legally documented or not. So at what point were we supposed to wait? Or how far were we supposed to, hold on for this to be resolved? I'm sorry, Mr. Malema, I disagree with you. But the question again I ask is, if Africans are attacking Africans, then where are we going? Is this real Pan-Africanism? This is crazy. This is crazy. This is crazy. And let me bring this back home to Ghana. I'm sad to hear political sentiments about this. I believe as a Ghanaian that this matter should not be politicized. So even for the current government, as much as you have done right by bringing our people home, let's not make this a political scoreline where we will be saying that if it was for some other political party which were in office, they may have not done what you have done. For me, it's an issue of doing fundamentally what is right for the citizens of Ghana. This is for Ghana, this is for Africa, and it's as simple as that. I want to believe that we have come to that point in our country, Ghana, where, especially when we use the last election as a yardstick, where we have seen people sensibly talk about politics and, talk about issues rather than political parties and the political device and what they stand to benefit and things of that nature. So this, for me, it tells me how much, because at the point of evacuation, we have not been asked who is an NDC member and who is an MPP member and who is a CPP member and whatever other political party that exists. We have not asked questions of this nature. All we are doing is bringing Ghanaians home. And that's all we have cared about since the situation started. Nobody's looking at what your party ID card before you are evacuated home. And so let's come together as Ghanaians. And as we are doing for ourselves, I hope that the rest of Africa is watching and will give similar attention to cases of this nature in our countries and outside our countries, especially on the face of the continent, because we have come to that point where I believe Africans deserve better from our governments, from our people, and from the people that say they are serving us because they are our leaders. We have come to that point. My final takeaway point in this matter is that the evacuation of Ghanaians from South Africa is more than a diplomatic incident. It's far more than a diplomatic incident. So how Ghana and South Africa will navigate the aftermath of this situation will say a lot more about the future of intra-African relations, which is a key thing. I rest my case on this matter. Now we'll go a little bit into artificial intelligence, where in Ethiopia, they are preparing to establish an artificial intelligence university aimed to position the country as a major African hub for AI education, innovation, and also research. Now, the university announced by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is expected to open in 2027 in Addis Ababa and will train up to 1,000 graduates annually, including students from across Africa on scholarship. The initiative forms part of Ethiopia's broader digital Ethiopia 2030 agenda, which seeks to make artificial intelligence central to economic reform, governance, and technological development. While supporters describe the project as a bold investment in Africa's digital future, critics also question whether Ethiopia should prioritize expensive AI initiatives amid ongoing conflict, poverty, and educational challenges. And this is a major question, because people are thinking, when there are still basic problems to be resolved, how are we thinking about heavy investments in artificial intelligence? Well, in my opinion, yes, let's think about the basic problems. Let's continue to solve them, but it does not also mean that we should stop thinking big as Africans or as Ethiopians. I think it's a step in the right direction, and when resources are properly channeled while still taking care of basic problems, at the same time, future technological problems can equally be looked into, infrastructure developed, and then we are solving problems both ways. Who knows? Maybe AI could possibly solve even some of the basic problems that we are thinking about. That's my personal take on that. So Ethiopia wants to become a continental leader when it comes to artificial intelligence. And so the Prime Minister says that the proposed university will combine human values with machine intelligence, which is an absolute beautiful thing, if you ask me. Now, the project is expected to place Africa at the center of emerging global AI conversations. Okay, so the big question is, can Ethiopia realistically become Africa's AI hub within the next decade? That's a challenge they have thrown to themselves, and so the world will be watching that from 2027 this university will be established. Now, what would the university offer when it is established? Now, the university or institution is expected to offer programs up to PhD levels. It will also produce 1,000 graduates annually, and also attract students from across Africa. Focus will also be heavily on research and innovation at this institution. And the university will also operate from a refurbished government facility funded partly by international donors. So what kind of jobs or industries could an AI-focused university create for African youth? I mean, that's a major question, because people are thinking, after investing heavily in technology, particularly AI in this case, what is going to be the benefit, especially to young people in Africa and also in Ethiopia? So the university forms part of Ethiopia's wider digital transformation efforts, and this also includes the AI-supported elections. Okay, imagine that. An AI-driven misinformation monitoring, smart police stations, biometric digital identification systems, and an AI monitoring of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, which is a very huge project and one of the major projects that Ethiopia currently prides themselves in. So is Ethiopia positioning itself as one of Africa's leading digital economies? Absolutely, that's a big yes for me. Okay, so with regards to this university, the concerns arguably come over privacy and also surveillance. Ethiopia's AI-powered digital ID program has already sparked controversy. Yeah, it's a conversation that is still going on the ground, and critics have argued that forcing citizens to adopt biometric systems raises privacy and surveillance concerns. But my friends, I tell you, there's no problem that cannot be solved, if you ask me, especially when you involve technology. And it's the reason we have to develop these aspects of our economy strongly, especially from the educational aspects. Now, some citizens have also reportedly lost access to government services for refusing digital registration. Absolutely, because we are getting digitized everywhere across the continent, because that's where the world is going at the moment. And what this means is that if we don't chase the digitization process quickly, we will lag behind. The world will go away from us. Already, Africa is around 50 years behind Europe and America, and it is crazy. When you go to places like Asia, especially in Japan and China, the kind of things that they are doing there currently, with the assistance of AI and technology is crazy. And this is a thing that we need to look at, not only in Ethiopia, but across the continent of Africa. So how can African countries, balance their innovation and privacy rights? I think that it all comes down to policy frameworks, okay, where we can talk about what the innovation is about, what the innovation is going to do. And then we figure out what the problems are going to be, especially when it comes to privacy rights, and handle these things ethically, because there are things that we should be able to allow and things that we should not also allow when it comes to these things. And I do understand why sometimes there can be a resistance, because human beings, sometimes we love our comforts. We love what we are used to, and we do not want change sometimes. So it becomes a challenge. But these are relevant questions we should not brush aside or sweep under the carpet. And our government's also moving fast enough when it comes to regulations so that we can keep up, because these conversations are going on even in Europe and in America. So it's a very huge conversation. Now let's look at the education versus the national priorities when it comes to the AI conversation. So critics are arguing that Ethiopia will or can face serious national challenges, including conflicts in regions such as Tigray and then Amhara, and then poverty and also unemployment, limited educational access, and then infrastructure gaps. Some also believe that the government should focus more on basic education and stability before launching ambitious tech projects. Look, these concerns are valid. I get it that in several African countries, many people struggle still in this year, 2026, with basic amenities. Okay, they don't have water, they are struggling with open defecation, they are struggling with electricity, they are struggling with even internet access. Then we want to talk about AI, machine learning, and things of this nature, which demands a lot of data. So the cases and the arguments are real, they are true. But then again, like I said earlier, what if through the establishment or deployment of all of this infrastructure for AI and machine learning, whatever, we can be able to find solutions easily for the basic problems? How about that? Have we thought about that? Okay, that's something I'd like you to think about as this conversation goes on. And the bigger debate is also this: should developing countries prioritize advanced technologies like AI while basic social challenges remain unresolved? Absolutely yes, for me. Yes, yeah, we should do that. But again, let's not do that leaving behind the basic problems. These two can work hand in hand. Whilst we are looking at the basic problems, we can still commit a good amount of resources into development of AI and other technologies. Okay. So let's also look at a little bit of how the global AI race is looking like. So countries worldwide are heavily investing in AI education and innovation, like I mentioned earlier. For example, if you go to Japan, you go to China, particularly in Asia, Singapore, the kind of things that they're doing when it comes to artificial intelligence is mind-blowing. And I'm excited that even in Africa, countries like Kenya, Rwanda have already started doing things of this nature. There are a few restaurants, for example, in Africa, or I think particularly in Kenya, where when you enter, a robot is what serves you, okay, rather than a human being. I know the other side, or the downside of it, is you are taking away the job from a waiter who gets paid after he has served you, okay? I get that. But how about also thinking about how to work around these machines and also do something around it and manage or learn to how to operate some of these things and then switch jobs. And then you have another skill you have learned in there. Okay, these are the kind of things we can be able to do to learn how to, work with technology, embrace it completely, and make sure that it is working for the greater good of the continent and the world at large. Now, Ethiopia's move also reflects a growing recognition that Africa risks being left behind in the global digital economy. Actually, if you ask me, we have already been left behind. Not like we are being left, we have already been left behind. And that's why we are struggling to catch up. And so a lot of African economies are trying their best to make sure that the narrative is changing and is changing really fast. Experts are also saying that Africa must develop local AI talent, which I agree with, and infrastructure to remain competitive. Absolutely. Otherwise, again, the conversation remains that we have already been left behind, and we will be left further behind if we do not invest heavily in AI talents and infrastructure. We'll remain out of the competition. We can't even start it in the first place if we don't, tackle this head on. International partnerships also have a role to play when it comes to projects of this nature. So the project is expected to receive support from international donors, the United Arab Emirates, the United Nations Development Program, and other technology partners. So Ethiopia is also developing data centers and digital infrastructure to support AI growth. And I think this is a very beautiful thing to do. And so maybe other African governments who have not thought about this or are lacking the idea of how to begin initiatives of this nature, maybe this is the solution. Engage international partners, engage development programs and technology partners, and see what can come out of it. Of course, these are conversations that can be held at high level for proper, let me say, mutual benefits for both, investors and then donors, and then the countries that are willing to chase this infrastructure and technology path together. So a question here will be this: will Africa's AI future depend on foreign partnerships, or can the continent build independent technological capacity? That's a major question. And it's a major question for me because consistently, Africa has depended on partnerships from the West most of the times. Africa has not been self-sufficient in a very, very long time. So can we depend only on foreign partnerships, or can we build independent technological capacity? If you ask me, I think we can, because we have the human resources, and we can, if we use our heads properly, I believe we can channel a good amount of resources into these kinds of projects to develop the capacity we need in a technological way to help the continent. We cannot always depend on the West. What happens when we wake up tomorrow and the West says that we've had enough, we have supported you for the past number of whatever years, and we think that we also want to pay attention to our people. And so we are shutting down all grants, all loans, all whatevers, and then that's about it. How many African countries can survive without international partnership or without international donor support? That's a major question. A very major question. Now, when we talk about AI as well, many people think about how AI can help in Africa and what sectors. If you care to know, AI can transform the agricultural sector, because now in agri people are using drones to do many things. Okay, in healthcare, it's one of the places that is seeing a lot of action going on when it comes to AI, and then in education as well. And then I'm sure you're asking about finance. It's possible there as well, and then in manufacturing, and then in public services. So in a nutshell, the conversation is simple. Does Africa currently have the infrastructure and expertise needed to sustain advanced AI institutions and the ideas we are talking about regarding AI? I think so, and we are building on it. We'll move on to our next story, and we are coming back home to Ghana, where the Ghana Association of Real Estate Brokers have suggested that Ghana's housing challenge is driven more by affordability issues than an actual shortage of houses. According to the Gary President Jacob Adolfo Anson, while Ghana's housing deficit is estimated at about 1.8 million and 2 million units, nearly 1.5 million housing units remain vacant across the country because they are beyond the financial reach of ordinary Ghanaians. So I want to ask you a question. When was the last time you took a bold effort to call an estate developer or an estate agent to say, I want to buy this property, maybe it's a 1-bedroom, a studio apartment, a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom, a 4-bedroom. Okay, because probably you're in your 30s or in your 40s, you're thinking about how much it's going to cost you to buy a house, or how much it's going to cost you to be a homeowner. Because the story largely in Africa is that people struggle because they are doing 9-to-5 jobs mostly, and they don't get paid properly. So they spend their entire lives working, the greater part of their lives working for people. And by the time they are having somewhere about 10 years to retirement, that's when they are probably able to afford a piece of land. And now they're going to take the next 5 years to build. So people think about, how about buying a house so I can stop paying rent and things of this nature. In Ghana, where we live and spend cedis, we're buying buildings in dollars. So an estate developer tells you a house costs $100,000. Okay, when you hear the sound of $100,000, reasonably, 100,000 sounds, yes, like 100,000, but then it is quoted in dollars. So the question is, how many Ghanaians are earning $100,000, even in a year, or even in 10 years? At the moment, given the exchange rate of about 11.7 in Ghana, we are looking at 1.174 million Ghana cedis for a house, probably, which is about a 2-bedroom. Recently, I've seen lands being sold for around the price of 100,000 cedis. Okay, so you buy a piece of land for 100,000 cedis, and it's going to take you the next 5 years to build your house. While you're building your house, you're still paying rent where you're living. Life is still going on. Other bills are still coming. Your kids' fees are still going on. How well are you going to be doing whilst you're building this house? So maybe you had a 5-year plan to build the house. By the time they are about 60 years, then they move in. They spend a lot of time working, stressing. Sadly, ill health comes in. 2, 3, 4, 5 years the most is when they live in the houses and they die. What did you gain? You struggle to build a house only to die? Is that what we live for? Is that how we want to live? So this conversation is huge. It's huge because estate developed to buy these houses. So how affordable can these houses be to the locals? And in recent times, let's even talk about people not even buying houses. Let's just talk about rent. A single room in Ghana at the moment could cost you nothing less than 1,000 Ghana cedis. So if you're paying, ideally, our rent control says we shouldn't pay more than 6 months in advance. But landlords will take a minimum of a year if you're lucky. In some cases, 2 years. So let's just say that your landlord is going to take, say, rent for 1 year. And it's 1,000 cedis because you're a single person, you live in a single room. 1,000 cedis times 12 gives you 12,000. Your average salary is about 2,000 cedis or 2,500, not up to 3,000 cedis in this country. So do the math and tell me how you're going to survive. So it's a rat race. At the end of the day, we are doing a hand-to-mouth thing, as we call it in Ghana. And that's all we are doing. So how much are you going to be able to save? How much are you going to be able to do for yourself? How well is the quality of your life? That's the question and the situation at the moment. So the Ghana housing problem, is it really a housing deficit? Gareb argues that Ghana may not necessarily lack houses. Instead, many available homes are unaffordable for the average Ghanaian. And that's what the problem is. Because if about 1.5 million housing units are reportedly lying vacant despite high demand for accommodation, then what are we doing? We are waiting for people in the diaspora to cough out $100,000 minimum to buy a house. Do we truly have a housing shortage? Or are the houses just too expensive for most people to buy and live in? I've had a chance to go across some properties in the country, and the least price I saw was around 100,000, 150, going out to $250,000. And many of these accommodations or buildings have been completed and fitted with air conditions. They are ready for owners to just buy them and simply move into them. That's all. Some of them have swimming pools and all of these things. Yeah, I know you want to ask me, what is the use of a swimming pool for me? Well, averagely, it shouldn't be a big deal. But given the nature of our continent and the places that we live in and how our economy looks like, now a swimming pool becomes a luxury. It becomes a luxury. So I asked that question earlier. What is the quality of our lives? If basic things like shelter is still a problem across the continent, particularly in Ghana. So many developers are focusing on luxury apartments and high-end estates. And even let's talk about even the high-rise buildings you're seeing across Accra. In several places, there are several high-rise buildings. Have you ever asked of the price of just even a studio apartment in one of these places? Try it. Just pick a number of any estate developer online. Give them a call. Act like a big man. Act like a big woman. Just give them a call and ask for the starting price, and you'll be shocked. Because even for these kind of apartments, there's some sort of restriction because you are living with other people in a whole block. Probably having about 100 neighbors in a whole block. So you can imagine, okay? And these are some of the challenges that we are dealing with in the country. So are we talking about affordability here, or we are talking about the excess that is available? So how affordable is this to the average Ghanaian? The rising cost of living and home ownership in this country is crazy. It is crazy. It is crazy. So as an average Ghanaian, my question to you is very simple. How old are you now? How much are you earning at the moment? When and how do you imagine that you own your own house, and at what age? Do the math. It's a thing you have to start to think about if you are a young Ghanaian or African. I don't know the situation in other countries, but usually the problems in Africa are not very different from the other countries. It's usually the same, often, because our structures of governance follow similar patterns across the various countries. So is the government doing enough to make housing affordable for ordinary citizens? That's a major question. Recently, we saw the rent control of Ghana go around even hostels, university hostels, and they were thinking or talking about how hostel prices have gone high because they think that the property owners are charging exorbitant prices for fees. Why do we do this to ourselves? We just talked about South Africans beating or killing other Africans. So you live in Ghana with your fellow Ghanaian. Why are you doing this to your fellow Ghanaian? The silence is loud enough. Empty homes versus homelessness, or empty houses versus homelessness. Is it a choice, or it's the system that has created this? That's a big question. Because there are homes that are empty, yet there are people that live on the streets. I'm sad this morning because the problems I'm talking about are too many. It's energy sucking, it's energy draining, and it doesn't look like a lot is being done about it. So you have more than 1.5 million units of houses in the system, but homelessness is crazy. I don't know the figures when it comes to the number of people who are homeless at the moment, but I can guarantee you, without a prophecy, that the number of people who are or who are homeless or living in not a proper accommodation like kiosk will surpass the 1.5 million buildings we are talking about at the moment that are vacant across the country. And it is crazy. It is crazy. Thousands struggle to find accommodation. Even when they find one to rent, they struggle to pay the rent. Yet many housing units remain unoccupied. Largely. I mean, a lot of people talk about business, and one of the best things to do when it comes to business is real estate. That's true. Of course, if you go into business, you buy property, you buy land, you buy whatever, you are expecting to, invest, build a home, sell it or rent it out, and make good money. That's because you want to be a billionaire or a millionaire, whatever. These things are good. But it seems to me as if we don't think about the kind of economy we live in and how we structure things. Of course, it's your money. You can make the decisions. But where is the balance when we are trying to make the decisions such that you also as a nested developer or a business person, your home will not be in the statistics as part of the 1.5 million homes that are vacant? Because it's going to take you longer to sell. When you're not making the money, probably you took a loan from the bank. And in Africa, or particularly in Ghana, when you take loans from the bank, it's very expensive. You're paying over 20% of that amount of money that you took. So sometimes this is part of the reason the properties are so expensive to buy, because you're trying to make your profit, and you're also supposed to pay the banks back together with the interest on the loans. So it does make sense economically or mathematically. But in the pockets of the average Ghanaian, it won't even begin to make any conversation before we even talk about how this is supposed to be making sense. And this is a huge, huge concern for people. And for me as well, if you ask me. So as a young person, let's do the math again. How old are you? Do you have a job at the moment? If you have a job, how much are you earning at the moment? With regards to how much you are earning, the average price of land, if you don't get it far away off Accra, you are looking at a minimum of 30,000 or 50,000 Ghana cedis. How much is your salary? So how much can you save to get a minimum of 30 to 50,000 to purchase a piece of land, which is probably on the outskirts of Accra? That's if you're lucky. And factor in the cost of building, even if it's 1-bedroom house, for your comfort, such that you will not pay rent. This also means that as far as you are living off Accra on the outskirts, you're going to be traveling back into Accra every time to work. This is the challenge of the average Ghanaian. I don't know what your story is in Zimbabwe, in Nigeria, in South Africa, in Malawi, in Lesotho, in Egypt, Botswana, wherever. But like I said, these stories are not very different when you follow the trajectory across the various African countries. And it's a problem. The comments by the Ghana real estate brokers has reignited an important national debate about housing accessibility in Ghana. While developers continue to build homes across the country, many ordinary citizens remain unable to afford decent accommodation. The challenge now may not simply be building more houses, but ensuring that the houses being built are truly accessible to the people who need them the most. Have you traveled Accra at night before? Just take a drive out, if you have a car or if you have the means. Just take a drive through Accra, maybe from the Nsawam Road to Accra Central, or from the Yarifa end to Accra Central, maybe from Tema, and look at the number of shops and pubs that have people sleeping in front of them. When they are flats, and you see all those videos on social media, look at the number of people who this rains displace because they don't have a proper place to sleep. So this in Ghana has generated a system where people have pieces of land, they are unable to develop it yet, so they allow squatters or caretakers to take a portion of that piece of land, they put a kiosk there and put up a structure. And that's where families live. This means that if you have a piece of land, let's say it's 100 by 100 piece of land, you have about 10 to 15 or 20 families living on there because they have built structures made of wood, which we call kiosks here, and they are living in there. Here's the question. Where are these people supposed to be taking their bath? Because you can't put a bathroom in this kiosk. Where are they supposed to be attending to nature's call? And that brings about the questions of open defecation. So look at how much problem we are creating as a result of the deficit in houses or whatever the problem might be, because now we know that there are more than 1.5 million houses in the system, but they are empty. So as a young Ghanaian, think again. As a young African, think again. How are you writing the story? How are you changing the narrative? And let me caution you here. Don't beat yourself about this because you are not the cause of the problem. Sadly, you have been born into the problem. You have inherited it because you live on the continent. So now, your challenge is to work your way out of this problem. For many of you who are firstborns, your brothers and sisters that are after you are looking up to you to make this things work out. Some of you are the only children of your families. And in Africa, we are very much okay with the idea that when you have been born and your parents have taken care of you, when you are older and you have good jobs, it is your turn to reciprocate what your parents have done in the last 25 years or 30 years taking care of you. But you know what I found out in the Bible? It says that a good man leaves an inheritance for his children. So that means that my children should not be able to give me any gift that will give anything I've ever given to them. So when I give to my children and they have grown, I should be able to even give them to the extent of giving to my grandchildren. That's what it means. That's what that scripture means. Can we think about this and make it the new rule or order, rather than thinking about how to raise our children and then the children will have to return the energy or the efforts when they are older? It's part of the reason the continent suffers. Take it or leave it. This is a truth many of us do not want to hear, but we have to make it clear enough. I don't know what you think. I don't know what solution you are thinking of, because I've spoken a lot. And these are my personal sentiments about this. What do you think? As I'm drawing to a close of the show today, that's what I want to leave you with. As a young African, as a young Ghanaian, think about this. I'm not trying to leave you on a sad note, but I'm trying to get you to be in the thinking mode to change the story. My name is Philemon Edwards, and this has been the Hello Africa Morning Show, which came to you live from the Association of African Universities here in Accra, Ghana. Thank you for staying with me. I'll see you next week.
Africa's next generation of leaders is rising, and Cairo is the meeting point. The Association of African Universities, AAU, proudly present the AAU African Student Leadership Summit 2026, bringing together student leaders, innovators, researchers, and change makers from across the continent. Happening on the 17th to 19th of August 2026 at Cairo, Egypt. This is more than a summit. It is a continental platform for leadership, collaboration, innovation, and shaping the Africa we want. Register now using the link on your screen. For more enquiries, call or WhatsApp us on the number on your screen, or contact via email showing on your screen. Applications are now open for the 2026 UNESCO CJID Storytelling Fellowship for Environmental Journalists. The Center for Journalism Innovation and Development, CJID, in partnership with UNESCO Global Media Defense Fund, is inviting applications for a 6-month investigative storytelling fellowship. This initiative aims to strengthen the capacity of journalists to conduct investigative reporting on cases of violence against environmental reporters while supporting the production, publication, and dissemination of these stories in line with international standards. Application deadline is June 8, 2026. For more information, visit the official webpage of the UNESCO CJID Storytelling Fellowship for Environmental Journalists.
Applications are now open for the 2026 Google Career Certificate Scholarships. In 2025, at the opening of Google's AI Community Center in Accra, Google pledged to support this growing talented pool by offering 100,000 Google Career Certificate scholarships. These scholarships provide access to flexible online training programs designed by Google experts to help individuals become job-ready in high-growth fields in under 6 months. The Google Career Certificates offer a flexible way to gain high-quality sought-after skills requiring no prior experience. Applications are still ongoing. For more information, visit the link on your screen.
This program is proudly sponsored by Venom Mineral Water, Share the Love, and Bigo Drinks.